I will not tolerate such behaviour. If you want to go out now, but if you stand again, I'll lord you out. Make your mind up. Either shut up and get out.
In a moment that stunned the nation, the Supreme Court has handed down a judgment that could end Keir Starmer's political career effective immediately. Westminster is in meltdown. The Prime Minister, who once stood as the symbol of Labour's redemption, is now being dragged into the darkest legal and constitutional storm the nation has seen in decades. Accusations of unlawful conduct, abuse of executive power and constitutional breach are now not just speculation. They are Supreme Court certified fact. And the consequences, devastating. Parliament has gone silent. Downing Street is barricaded. The cabinet is fractured. Social media is erupting with demands for Starmer's immediate resignation. Protesters are gathering outside 10 Downing Street. And from the palace, silence. The monarchy watches as the nation begins to unravel. But the real story isn't just that the Supreme Court ruled against the Prime Minister, it's what the government tried to hide. What led to this explosive moment was a series of covert decisions, ignored warnings, and a top-secret memo leaked just 24 hours ago. A memo that may now change the course of British democracy forever. It started with a vote, a seemingly routine executive order signed by Starmer and pushed through without parliamentary consent. The public was told it was minor, procedural, necessary. But behind the scenes, legal advisors inside Whitehall were in panic. They warned the PM's team this move might violate constitutional principles and directly contradict the Supreme Court's prior guidance. Those warnings were ignored. Instead, Starmer doubled down. He summoned his closest circle, a handful of unelected strategists and senior aides, to hammer the policy through. What followed was a clandestine operation, bypassing scrutiny, silencing dissent within Labour, and pushing through a measure that many now say placed the Prime Minister above the law. And then it leaked. A senior legal officer, whose name is still protected under whistleblower law, handed a confidential internal memo to a journalist at The Guardian. That document detailed deliberate suppression of legal advice and a known breach of democratic procedure. Within hours, the Supreme Court was compelled to act. In an emergency session held under conditions of national urgency, the UK's highest legal body ruled that the Prime Minister's decision was not only unconstitutional but unlawful. The judgment was clear. The Prime Minister had acted beyond his legal authority. He had defied the law, not reformed it. The ruling was unanimous. And with that, the political floor collapsed beneath Keir Starmer's feet. Legal experts rushed to dissect the implications, but the language was already unambiguous. The Prime Minister has breached the limitations of executive power and may no longer exercise lawful authority in the relevant functions. In simple terms, the Supreme Court declared Starmer unfit to lead. No precedent, no warning, no escape. Within minutes, ministers began withdrawing support. Defence Secretary Michael Rowley released a midnight statement condemning the PM's actions as a profound violation of public trust. The Home Secretary resigned. The Chief Whip vanished from public view. And then the calls for Starmer's removal began first from the backbenches, then from his own cabinet. Even Labour MPs who once shielded him from every scandal now whispered the same words to journalists. It's over. But what makes this moment so explosive isn't just the ruling itself, it's what it reveals. Because at the heart of this political earthquake lies a moral failure that has been building for months. A pattern of behaviour, quiet manipulations of process, silent purges within the party, dozens of once loyal civil servants reassigned or let go after raising internal objections. Starmer's grip on power had slowly evolved into something darker, more authoritarian, more dangerous. And now it's all out in the open. What the public saw as a controlled leader The courts have now exposed as a constitutional threat, not just to his office, but to the very idea of parliamentary democracy. Yet one question remains: if the Prime Minister has been legally stripped of authority, who is now running the country? The Constitution does not have a script for this. The monarch's role, while ceremonial, is now being quietly reassessed. Some insiders suggest emergency meetings have already been held at Buckingham Palace. Others report that senior aides to King Charles are preparing a direct public statement, a rare and historic intervention. And amidst all this, the public is furious. Outside Downing Street, chants grow louder. "Resign now," they cry. "Defend the law." Across social media, hashtags like #StarmerOut, #SaveOurDemocracy, and #Court vs Corruption are trending worldwide. Constitutional scholars warn that the nation is on the brink of a legal crisis, not seen since the days of Charles I. Because when the court strips a leader of lawful power, and Parliament hasn't yet named a successor, the country enters a void. Who speaks for Britain now? Who holds the pen on policy? Who leads our military, signs our treaties, steers our nation through the fire? The answer may change everything. But what if the Prime Minister refuses to step down? What if Keir Starmer declares the court wrong and fights back? In the hours after the Supreme Court's historic judgment, something deeply unsettling happened, not in the public eye, not on the floor of Parliament, but behind locked doors in a quiet government building, shielded from reporters and beyond the reach of democratic oversight. According to multiple insider sources now leaking details to investigative outlets, Prime Minister Keir Starmer did not retreat. He did not apologise. He did not accept the court's authority. Instead, he picked up the phone and placed a direct call to Buckingham Palace. What followed was a conversation that, if confirmed, could ignite the most dangerous constitutional conflict Britain has faced in over a century. Starmer, in his darkest political hour, is said to have invoked emergency national security protocols not to protect the nation, but to protect himself. His claim that the Supreme Court's ruling, though unanimous, was politically motivated, a coordinated strike by what he called judicial activists and embedded Tory loyalists. He told the King, reportedly, that the judgment was null, unconstitutional, and threatened the functioning of the British state. In that single moment, Starmer did something no sitting Prime Minister has dared do in modern history. He questioned the supremacy of the court and implied that as Prime Minister, he alone held the mandate of the people. The call, insiders say, lasted only 8 minutes, but its consequences may last a generation. According to one senior source within the palace, the King was left visibly disturbed by the exchange. He reportedly ended the call with a single chilling phrase: "The Crown must remain neutral, Prime Minister, but the Constitution will defend itself." That statement, now leaked across every newsroom in Westminster, has sent shockwaves through the establishment. Because if true, it marks the first hint that the monarchy, a body designed to be silent, may be preparing to speak. But Starmer didn't stop there. Shortly after the palace call, Whitehall entered lockdown. A rare level 4 communications protocol was activated, restricting internal digital traffic, suspending staff access, and temporarily disabling external press briefings. By morning, the public was left with nothing but silence from the PM's office. No speech, no apology, no acknowledgement of the Supreme Court, just a growing vacuum and a growing suspicion that the Prime Minister was refusing to comply with the judgment. And then, at 10:42 a.m, a breaking alert from the Times detonated like a political bombshell. Documents leaked by whistleblowers from the Cabinet Office revealed that Starmer's legal advisers had in fact pre-drafted legal arguments to ignore the Supreme Court's ruling days before it was even handed down. These drafts, marked eyes only, argued that in moments of constitutional crisis, the Prime Minister could suspend or override judicial review under the doctrine of executive necessity. In essence, Starmer was preparing a soft coup. One not led with tanks or soldiers, but with silence, a legal ambiguity, and a defiant refusal to step aside. Constitutional scholars were horrified. Sir Malcolm Renner, a former Supreme Court judge himself, issued a rare televised warning. If the Prime Minister enacts this doctrine, we no longer live in a constitutional monarchy. We live under an elected autocrat. Public reaction was instant and explosive. Outside Parliament, thousands surged forward. Protesters broke through security barriers and began chanting directly at the gates of Westminster, "Obey the law. Step down and now." Across the country, Labour Party offices were vandalised. In Birmingham, activists locked arms outside the City Council building and refused to leave until Starmer publicly accepted the ruling. In Manchester, students staged mass walkouts. Teachers, lawyers, even civil servants began releasing videos online, condemning Starmer's silence and calling for mass civil disobedience if he stayed in power. And then came the generals. In a move unseen since the Suez crisis, the Chief of the Defence Staff released a coded but unmistakable statement. The British Armed Forces remain loyal to the Constitution and to lawful authority. We do not answer to ideology, we answer to law. It was brief, it was clear, it was a message to the Prime Minister, do not test the chain of command, but Starmer was already digging in. As the Prime Minister clung to power and the legal order buckled, all eyes turned to the one institution Britain never expected to rise, the Crown. For decades, the monarchy has been ceremonial and a quiet pillar of continuity in an ever-changing democracy. But now, in the face of a Prime Minister defying the Supreme Court, undermining Parliament and pushing the nation toward constitutional implosion, whispers began to echo through the halls of Buckingham Palace. Whispers of a royal intervention, not symbolic, not routine, but real, active and absolute. The rumour first surfaced just after 6 p.m, an unconfirmed report that King Charles III had summoned his most senior constitutional advisers to the palace. Within the hour, it was confirmed. Lord Chamberlain, the Keeper of the Privy Seal, Sir Anthony Roxburgh, and a handful of senior jurists were seen entering through the North Gate. The palace declined to comment, but insiders told the Telegraph that a royal statement was being drafted. One that could publicly strip the Prime Minister of legitimacy, call for the formation of an emergency caretaker government, and if necessary, activate the royal prerogative in defence of constitutional order. Make no mistake, this was no ordinary moment. For a monarch raised under the shadow of scandal and modern scrutiny, King Charles has long been cautious, calculated and restrained. But even the Crown has its breaking points. Sources close to the palace say the king was visibly shaken by Starmer's call and deeply disturbed by the public breakdown of lawful authority. It wasn't just a matter of politics anymore, it was a matter of national stability, of constitutional integrity, of moral duty. At 7:15 p.m, something unprecedented happened. A leak, not from Downing Street, but from inside the monarchy itself. An anonymous aide, verified by multiple news outlets, revealed the opening lines of the draft statement being circulated in the King's inner circle. They read, "When the instruments of democratic governance fall into peril, the Crown does not choose sides. It defends the nation. It defends the people. It defends the law." Those words, leaked, not spoken, were enough to send Westminster into full-blown crisis mode. Senior Labour MPs were said to be in panic. WhatsApp groups erupted with desperate pleas for party unity. Some urged Starmer to step down before it's too late. Others begged the palace to delay any statement to avoid inflaming tensions, but the wheels were already in motion. The monarchy had moved from observer to guardian. And outside the palace, the public reaction was electric. Tens of thousands poured into the streets around Buckingham, chanting, "Defend the Crown, save the law." In Glasgow, Edinburgh, Cardiff, even Belfast, thousands more gathered in spontaneous solidarity. For the first time in living memory, Britons from all corners of the Union stood united, not behind a party or a protest, but behind their monarch. Not because they worshipped the institution, but because the Crown had now become the last firewall between a rogue government and national collapse. And then just before 9 p.m, it happened. Every major news broadcaster interrupted programming. The royal standard was raised. a single podium placed before the Golden Gates. The king did not emerge, but a statement was read aloud by the Lord Chamberlain on live television. The words were brief, but they thundered across the nation like a declaration of war. It is with grave concern that the Crown acknowledges the present crisis in governance. It is the judgment of the nation's highest court that the current administration has exceeded its lawful authority. In defence of the Constitution, the Crown recognises the need for lawful transition and urges Parliament to act with urgency to restore order and democratic integrity. The Crown stands as ever in service of the law, not above it. The Prime Minister is urged to consider his position immediately. The moment the statement ended, Britain changed. It was not a command. It did not need to be. It was a royal pressure valve, a constitutional scalpel, and it sliced through the chaos like steel. The impact was immediate. Half of Starmer's cabinet resigned within the hour. The Attorney General, who had been silent for 2 days, released a one-line press release. "I no longer recognise the authority of the Prime Minister." Civil service unions began announcing work stoppages. Police chiefs issued joint statements pledging loyalty to the law, not the government. And in Parliament, the Speaker convened a midnight emergency session, invoking ancient parliamentary statutes not used since World War II to prepare for an expedited vote of no confidence. But Starmer wasn't finished. Rather than resign, the Prime Minister released a defiant video from inside Number 10. Constitutional scholars warn that the nation is on the brink of a legal crisis not seen since the days of Charles I. Because when the court strips a leader of lawful power, and Parliament hasn't yet named a successor, the country enters a void. Who speaks for Britain now? Who holds the pen on policy? Who leads our military, signs our treaties, steers our nation through the fire? The answer may change everything. But what if the Prime Minister refuses to step down? What if Keir Starmer declares the court wrong and fights back? In the hours after the Supreme Court's historic judgment, something deeply unsettling happened, not in the public eye, not on the floor of Parliament, but behind locked doors in a quiet government building, shielded from reporters and beyond the reach of democratic oversight. According to multiple insider sources now leaking details to investigative outlets, Prime Minister Keir Starmer did not retreat. He did not apologise. He did not accept the court's authority. Instead, he picked up the phone and placed a direct call to Buckingham Palace. What followed was a conversation that, if confirmed, could ignite the most dangerous constitutional conflict Britain has faced in over a century. Starmer, in his darkest political hour, is said to have invoked emergency national security protocols not to protect the nation, but to protect himself. His claim that the Supreme Court's ruling, though unanimous, was politically motivated, a coordinated strike by what he called judicial activists and embedded Tory loyalists. He told the King, reportedly, that the judgment was null, unconstitutional, and threatened the functioning of the British state. In that single moment, Starmer did something no sitting Prime Minister has dared do in modern history. He questioned the supremacy of the court and implied that as Prime Minister, he alone held the mandate of the people. The call, insiders say, lasted only 8 minutes, but its consequences may last a generation. According to one senior source within the palace, the King was left visibly disturbed by the exchange. He reportedly ended the call with a single chilling phrase: "The Crown must remain neutral, Prime Minister, but the Constitution will defend itself."